The Zeldar Dominion had conquered countless worlds, each with the same ruthless efficiency. Their warriors, the KYR were precision incarnate, engineered for war, born with eyes that saw beyond the visible spectrum, reflexes tuned to microscopic adjustments, and a neural link system that made calculating bullet drop, wind resistance, and movement as simple as breathing. They did not miss. Commander Vrakal stood before the assembled ranks of his marksmen, his voice resonating with certainty. Humans call themselves snipers, but their crude projectiles and primitive instincts are nothing before the KYR. They rely on luck. We rely on perfection. Today, we demonstrate why their kind is obsolete. Across the field, the human contingent stood in silence. Among them, Staff Sergeant Logan, Ghost, Mercer adjusted the sling of his rifle, scanning the alien warriors lined in perfect formation. His spotter, Sergeant Ryan Brick Calloway, leaned in. They're real proud of themselves, huh? Mercer didn't answer. He studied the terrain, the wind, the variables that mattered. The Zeldar had invited them to this exercise to prove a point. Humanity was outmatched. Their arrogance was expected, but what intrigued him was the confidence in their snipers. They genuinely believed there was no contest. The course was set, a simulated battlefield spread across a jagged landscape of steel and stone, littered with distant targets, moving drones, and randomized obstructions designed to test accuracy, speed, and adaptability. Each team would deploy their best to eliminate high-value targets under battlefield conditions. The first rounds were one-sided. The KYR fired in perfect synchronization, their weapons nearly silent, their shots landing with unerring precision. Drones mimicking human scouts fell before they had time to react. Wind shifts, dust interference, none of it mattered. Their neural-linked targeting adjusted instantaneously, correcting for micromovements that would take a human sniper valuable seconds to process. The American team moved into position, setting up for their turn. Mercer dropped prone, sighted in, and exhaled slow. He lined up a 900-meter shot on a moving drone. Finger on the trigger, steady pressure. Before he fired, the target disintegrated. A KYR sniper had taken the shot a fraction of a second faster. The radio crackled with quiet murmurs from the other American snipers. Mercer adjusted his scope, shifting to another target, but each time, the moment he acquired a shot, it was already gone. By the end of the round, the results were clear. KYR eliminations outnumbered human kills 10-1. A Zeldar officer turned toward the human ranks, his mandibles clicking in something resembling amusement. "Is that all?" Calloway exhaled sharply, muttering under his breath. Mercer kept his face unreadable, but his mind worked fast. The KYR were exceptional, but that didn't make them invincible. They were perfect shots, yes, but perfection had a flaw. Mercer replayed the shots in his mind. The aliens fired within the same reaction window every time. Their adjustments were precise but predictable. Their movements fluid but reliant on a system. Their superiority was not instinct, it was calculation. Commander Vrakal stepped forward, addressing the assembled forces. "Humans, you have fought well, for creatures bound by archaic methods. But this is the truth of the battlefield. Evolution dictates the strong survive. And in this war, strength is measured by perfection. You are obsolete." Mercer let the words settle, feeling the weight of every Marine beside him. He could see it in their eyes, the flicker of doubt, the frustration of losing not just a contest, but a fundamental part of their identity. American snipers weren't supposed to lose. He pulled his rifle up, checking the scope, as if adjusting for the next round. But he wasn't looking at his rifle. He was watching the KYR, watching how they held their weapons, how they breathed in sync with their targeting systems. A system could be learned. A system could be broken. He glanced at Calloway, voice low. "They think we're predictable." Calloway frowned. "Yeah, because they're hitting us before we can even pull the trigger." "Exactly," Mercer said. "They're playing chess with numbers. We need to change the game." The Zeldar prepared for the next round, confident the outcome would be no different. Mercer settled into position, but this time, his focus wasn't on hitting a target, it was on watching the enemy. Learning. Adapting. Perfection was predictable, and predictable could be exploited. The debrief was silent. The Marines sat in the dimly lit barracks, their weapons stripped and laid out for maintenance, but no one spoke. The weight of failure hung over them, thick and unshakable. They had been beaten. Not by skill, not by experience, but by something colder, calculation. The KYR Arjan had executed them with mechanical precision, like numbers in an equation that had already been solved. Staff Sergeant Logan Mercer sat at the edge of his cot, rolling a spent casing between his fingers. Across from him, Sergeant Ryan Calloway wiped down the bolt of his rifle, his movements slower than usual. No jokes, no complaints. Just quiet frustration. "We're not winning this straight up," Calloway finally muttered. Mercer nodded. He had been running the same conclusion through his head since the first round. The KYR Arjan didn't miss because they didn't shoot like humans. They didn't calculate variables, they eliminated them. Every shot was adjusted by a neural-linked targeting system, removing hesitation, wind resistance, even human error. There was no thought behind their marksmanship, only execution. Tech Sergeant Alex Hawthorne leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. They're faster, more accurate, and their system accounts for every factor before they fire. His voice was steady, but his knuckles were white against his rifle. "So what do we do?" Mercer set the casing down, his eyes sharpening. "We change the battlefield." The Marines looked up. "Their precision is their weakness," Mercer continued. "They don't hunt like us. They don't adapt like us. Every kill they make follows a formula, and formulas can be broken." Calloway frowned. "They're still faster on the trigger." "For now," Mercer said. The plan took shape over the next hour. The KYR Arjan fired on an unshakable algorithm, always anticipating movement, always tracking the fastest path to a kill. That reliance on technology gave them an edge, but it also made them predictable. If they were used to tracking humans based on movement, heat signatures, and digital range finding, then the solution wasn't to outshoot them. It was to make them shoot at nothing. They stripped their gear of all electronic systems, no rangefinders, no digital optics, no tracking software. They adjusted their ghillie suits, layering them with infrared-disrupting materials to blend with the ambient environment. They changed movement patterns using erratic shifts, false trails, and dead space where a KYR Arjan would expect to find a target, but wouldn't. Every step, every breath was calculated to be unreadable. By the time the next round started, the battlefield had changed. Mercer took his position, rifle pressed firm against his shoulder, but he wasn't looking at his target. He was watching the KYR Arjan. They moved like they had before, smooth, controlled, unbothered. They were still operating under the assumption that the fight would unfold the same way. The first shot rang out. A human drone fell. Then another. The KYR Arjan were working down their list, eliminating targets in the same efficient order. And then Mercer saw it. The hesitation. It was small, barely noticeable, but it was there. The KYR Arjan's sniper shifted slightly, his weapon adjusting, as if second-guessing the shot. The system had found a discrepancy. Something in the equation didn't add up. Mercer exhaled and pulled the trigger. The KYR Arjan sniper's head snapped back, body crumpling. For the first time, a confirmed kill. The battlefield shifted. The alien, so confident only moments ago, adjusted. The neural network recalculated, but was already too late. Mercer's team was no longer moving like humans. They were moving like ghosts, unreadable, untouchable. A second alien went down. Then a third. The KYR Arjan fired back, but their shots hit only empty air. Their algorithm had failed them. For the first time, the fight was even. The silence over the comms was more telling than any victory chant. The KYR Arjan had stopped calling their shots. No confident confirmations, no clipped acknowledgments. The rhythm of their execution had faltered. Mercer could feel it in the way they moved now, no longer with the assured grace of predators, but with the calculated wariness of prey that had been wounded for the first time. Calloway lay beside him, peering through his spotting scope. "They're adjusting." Of course they were. The KYR Arjan weren't mindless. They were elite, engineered to overcome. They had relied on neural link targeting, and when that failed them, they fell back on sheer experience. Mercer had expected that. He had counted on it. Hawthorne's voice crackled over the radio. "They're deploying counter-sniper drones. We push now, or we're done." Mercer shifted his rifle, scanning the ridgeline. High above, the drones flickered in and out of visibility, small and silent, their optical camouflage pulsing to blend with the environment. If they took the bait, if they let those drones flush them out, the KY would regain control of the battlefield. He adjusted his scope, slowing his breathing. This shot had to count. The moment the nearest drone crested the ridgeline, Mercer fired. The impact was instant, a precise hit straight through the optics. The drone spiraled downward, its cloaking field flickering before smashing into the rocks below. Before the KY could react, Hawthorne took out a second drone, then Calloway a third. The battlefield tilted again, but this time, the Marines didn't wait for the KY to adapt. They moved first. Calloway and Hawthorne shifted positions, using staggered fire to mislead enemy sensors. Mercer took the longest path around engagement zone, keeping low, rifle tight against his shoulder. The KY would expect a counterattack from a logical angle, but logic was their weakness. Minutes passed. The aliens were repositioning, scanning, seeking, but they weren't used to looking without their technology guiding them. A shot rang out. Not theirs. One of the KY toppled from his perch, his rifle clattering against the rocks. Mercer had his opening. He adjusted his aim, found the next sniper, and squeezed the trigger. Another kill. The radio clicked. Calloway's voice, low and steady. "We're not just matching them now." Mercer chambered another round. "We're hunting them." The battlefield had changed. The KY were no longer predators, controlling the hunt. They were reacting now, searching for ghosts in a war they had once dictated with ease. Mercer could see it in the way they moved, no longer sweeping through kill zones with mechanical precision, but second-guessing, recalculating, hesitating. Their neural link targeting had failed them, and without it, they were relying on instincts dulled by years of dependence on technology. Calloway lay prone beside him, eyes locked on his spotting scope. They know they're losing. Mercer adjusted his grip on the rifle. Doesn't mean they'll roll over. The remaining KY had repositioned, but Mercer could see their mistake. They were still following a pattern, one built on the assumption that humans fought like predictable prey. The problem was the Americans had stopped playing by the rules. Hawthorne's voice cut through the radio. "Got eyes on the commander. 800 meters, South Ridge. He's not hiding. He's waiting." Mercer understood the move immediately. Commander Vrockall wasn't running. He was bait. The aliens were learning, adapting, trying to draw them into a clean engagement where their superior reflexes could take over again. A predictable counterattack would be their last mistake. Mercer exhaled slowly and made his decision. "Calloway, shift position. We're breaking this now." The Marine moved without hesitation, slipping into the underbrush, his movements silent, deliberate. The KY were watching for standard sniper tactics, overlapping fire lanes, predictable counterfire from known positions. They weren't ready for a kill team that had stopped thinking like snipers and started thinking like hunters. Seconds passed. The wind shifted. The battlefield had gone completely still. Then movement. A KY sniper adjusted his aim, his focus snapping toward where he expected a shot to come from. It was exactly what Mercer had been waiting for. He fired. The alien's body jerked, then crumpled. Before the others could react, Calloway's rifle cracked from a new angle, dropping a second. The last two KY turned to engage, but by the time their weapons adjusted, it was already over. Hawthorne took one. Mercer finished the other. Silence settled over the battlefield. Calloway exhaled. And that's how you break a system. Mercer chambered a new round, scanning for movement. Nothing. The KY were down. The hunt was over. The radio crackled, this time with an unfamiliar voice. "Commander Vrockall, you have earned something rare, humans," the alien said, his voice steady despite his loss. "Respect." Mercer kept his rifle up. "We didn't come here for respect." A pause. Then, quiet amusement. Perhaps not. But you have proven a truth we had forgotten. Perfection is an illusion. The transmission cut. Mercer exchanged a glance with Calloway. Hawthorne adjusted his scope one last time before standing. It was over. The Marines gathered their gear, moving out before Zeldar reinforcements could arrive. They hadn't just won a match. They had rewritten the battlefield. The KYR had relied on technology to make them invincible. But in the end, nothing could replace the one thing no system could replicate: instinct. Mercer slung his rifle over his shoulder, eyes scanning the horizon one last time. They had come here as the underdogs, outmatched and outgunned. Now, they were the ones being studied.